Hello and welcome to the Intramural Sports Captains Meeting for our Spring 2017 Phase 2 Sports. This is a brief agenda of what we're going to talk about today. We will do an introduction of our staff, the responsibilities our captains have within our intramural sports program, what it looks like to use our website, IM Leagues as a captain, eligibility, what defaults and forfeits mean for your team, sportsmanship, playoffs, the sports and some specific rules that we have, and then a few concluding notes. Today, I am presenting with Crystal Durham. My name is DJ Doss. I'm the Intramural Sports Senior Coordinator. Crystal is our graduate assistant in her first year with the program. Some of the staff members that you'll see out at our fields and facilities on a nightly basis are our sport directors and supervisors. Our sport directors are students that have moved up from the supervisor position and are helping us create training materials for our officials. They also will be serving as supervisors. You'll see them out on our fields and at the facilities in a black polo with a gold stripe across it. They're there to help you with any kind of different circumstance that comes up across the night, including injuries, any issues with the game, the officials, anything that comes up along those lines. So they'll be monitoring it, and they'll be there to help you check in at the games as well. So they're there to be your support at the games. Some responsibilities that you have for us as a program. We expect you to be knowledgeable of our rules and the procedures. We want you to read all the communication that we send to you. It's going to typically be through email from IM Leagues. You're going to be responsible for your roster on our website, so make sure that everything is accurate on the website with your team roster. Communicate anything that we send along to you down to your team members. Know the eligibility of your teammates. If somebody's ineligible, typically that's going to show up on our website, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but at the end of the day, it is your responsibility to know whether your teammates are eligible or not. You're going to communicate with our officials and any staff members at the game site, help keep your team and your fans under control, and help us manage any kind of conflict that may arise before, during, or after the game. And you're going to help us address any questions or concerns with our staff members at the site and up to our graduate assistant and coordinator. A few quick updates and changes that we've had with the program. Most of these started in the fall, but just in case you're just coming back to the program, we do have a grace period in effect, and one change with that is that if the team does not have any representatives at the game site at game time, it is an automatic forfeit. We won't use the grace period if there's nobody there for that team. Forfeit deposits have transitioned to be completely online, so now they are forfeit fees, and we will talk about that a little bit later in the presentation. Sportsmanship scale has changed just a little bit more user-friendly, and we'll hit on that later as well. With roster caps, your team now has a maximum amount of people that you can have on the roster on the website. It's very similar to our old check-in maximum, where we used to have, you could have as many people on the roster as possible, but you can only check in a certain amount of people at the site. Now that cap also kind of reflects that as well. And the team schedules and playoffs, we've actually moved to where everybody can make playoffs. You're still going to get scheduled for 4 games, so it'll be a 3-game regular season and then a 4th game guaranteed to be scheduled in playoffs so long as your sportsmanship fits. So you'll still get those 4 games, but the number of teams in your division as well as the actual regular season schedule is going to look a little bit different than what it did in the past.
IM Leagues is the website we use for the scheduling of intramural sports. This is the main Kennesaw State University page on IM Leagues. On the left, you can see the link to the sport rules and the participants guide. The arrow on the right shows the links to the default form and the spectator request form. This is the league page. Here you can see all the teams in each division, their record, sportsmanship rating, and their forfeits and defaults. As captain, you will need to use this view to see if your team has forfeited a game. All forfeits during the regular season will result in a forfeit fee being charged to the captain's student account. On your team page, you can use the Team Options button to change your team name and other settings in team settings, view available free agents for your team, and view your team roster. From the team roster page, you as the captain are able to invite players to your team and remove players if they have not yet played in a game. At the top of the page, requests for players to join your team will be displayed in a red box for you to review and accept or deny. Students are eligible to participate in intramural sports if they are currently enrolled in at least 1 credit hour as a degree-seeking student and pay the student recreation fee. If a student's tuition fees do not include the student recreation fee, students can opt into the student membership. If a student withdraws from all of their classes during the semester, they are no longer eligible to participate in intramural sports. KSU faculty and staff that are currently employed are eligible to participate in intramural sports. They must have a faculty or staff KSU ID badge and receive a paycheck from the university. Additionally, they will need to purchase the faculty or staff combo membership. Ineligible participants are listed as suspended on IM leagues and on the score sheet. Participants can be ineligible for a variety of reasons, such as past ejections, long-term visitors, KSU alumni, students taking a semester off, students that have withdrawn from their classes, students in the College of Continuing and Professional Education, intensive English program students, accepted students that have not begun taking classes, spouses, or other family members. Participants can play on a maximum of 1 single-gender team and 1 co-rec team. Whichever team a participant joined first is considered their team. Any other teams using that player will be considered as having used an ineligible participant. If there are extenuating circumstances surrounding leaving a team, you can contact the intramural sports office to see if you are able to change teams. Teams caught using an ineligible participant in a game will result in the team forfeiting that game. All forfeits result in a charge to you, the captain. It's better to be safe than to be charged the forfeit fee. If you have any questions regarding a participant's eligibility, please contact the intramural sports office.
Within our program, we also limit the number of ringers that are able to play on a team. Some ringers include varsity athletes, club athletes, professional athletes, and former varsity athletes. Varsity athletes that are currently on a roster or have been listed on a roster for the same or corresponding sport in that academic year are not eligible to participate in that sport for intramural sports. Also, professional athletes, past or present within a sport, would not be able to play in that same or corresponding sport in intramural sports. Former varsity athletes are eligible to participate with intramural sports, and that means that they are not listed on that roster in the current academic year but have been listed on a varsity roster in the past. Club sport members for any sport currently are eligible to participate in intramural sports as well. However, we do limit the number of total former varsity athletes and club sport members on a team. You can have a total of 3 of any combination of former varsity athletes and club sport members. So you can have 3 club sport members and no former varsity athletes, 2 and 1, or you can have less as well. For our fraternity and sorority teams, you must be listed on that roster for the organization for that academic year. You also must be in good standing with the Office of Fraternity and Sorority Life, as does that organization need to be in good standing. Any organization that is not in good standing cannot use their Greek name or utilize their signifying marks, including their letters. So you can't wear your letters during play. You can't use your Greek name for your team name as well. Defaults and forfeits are situations where teams are not going to be able to play a game that they're scheduled for. The default form is listed on IM Leagues near the top of the page. The team can fill that out by noon the day of the scheduled contest, and as long as it's completed by that time, it will count as a loss for your team, but you're still going to be able to stay in the league. You're not going to be removed. Your captain is not going to get charged a forfeit fee, and any second default or default after your first default will be considered a forfeit. You can also complete your default form further in advance than that 12 o'clock noon the day of the game. If you know a week in advance that you're not going to be able to play that next week, you can complete it and we will still process it in the system. Forfeits happen for a number of different reasons. It can be that you don't have enough players by the time we get to the end of the grace period. You don't have anybody show up at the beginning of the grace period at game time. It could be from poor sportsmanship, utilizing ineligible players, like we just discussed, including 2 or more defaults, and then if the team drops after we schedule the games on IM Leagues. If any of those situations happen, the captain's going to get charged a forfeit fee. Now it's going to get charged to your student banner account. We used to do the deposit where it was dropped off with the program. We don't do that anymore. Um, we really just want to charge in these cases where the team actually forfeits. And this is not something where we're trying to get money out of the team. We're trying to cover costs for the program since we're not going to actually be playing the game, but we still have staff members out there, and we did have another team show up. So for our league sports, if the team forfeits, it will be a $40 charge to the captain. If it's a team tournament sport, it's going to be a $20 charge. And for any singles or doubles tournament, it'll be $10. Our grace period is a little bit new. It's been around for almost a year and a half now. It's a situation, it's a table that we use to try to keep games still happening and trying to avoid forfeits for the teams. So there's still a punishment per se for showing up late. If you're 1 to 5 minutes late, you can see, depending on which league you're in and which sport it is, you start down by a certain amount of points. And you also lose the coin toss or lose possession, depending on what sport it is. And then if you're 6 to 10 minutes late, it gets to be a little bit more severe. The grace period in game time is always based on our supervisor's cell phone at the game site. So in theory, we should all be the same across the board on our cell phone time. So that's our true test of the time to make sure that we're all on the same page with the grace period. Lastly, with special game situations, if you win or you lose by default or by forfeit, the scores are listed in the intramural handbook for the table that we use to list out what the winning team gets, what the losing team gets. For sportsmanship scores, always our winning team will get a 4.0 sportsmanship. If you default, you will get a 3.33 sportsmanship, which is equivalent to an A-. And then our forfeiting teams would get a 2.33, which is equivalent to a B-. For weather, we will make announcements on IM Leagues if we ever have to reschedule or cancel. If there's a game in progress, if we've reached halftime, it will be able to be counted as an official game. If we have not reached halftime, we'll make a decision about whether we can go back and reschedule those games. Otherwise, we don't really reschedule games. We don't move games around. It's typically just going to be based on weather if we have to reschedule. And that's also why we have the default available for teams in these types of situations where teams can't show up to games.
A roster is the list of all the individuals on your team. There is a maximum number of players you can have on your team's roster. Roster caps vary per sport and are listed on IM Leagues and in each rules document. Teams can add players to their roster until the end of the team's first playoff game. Captains must verify the players on their team's roster on IM Leagues before the playoffs begin. Every player must check in and play in at least one regular season game or the team's first playoff game to be eligible for the rest of the playoffs. Once a player has checked in for a game, they are permanently on that team's roster. Players cannot be removed from teams or switch teams once they have played in a game. To check in for each game, all players must show a valid form of ID to the intramural sports staff on site. Valid forms of ID include your KSU ID, your Georgia Highlands College ID, and any government-issued photo ID such as your driver's license or your passport. Credit cards with photos on them or other school IDs are not valid forms of ID for intramural sports. Participants must bring their physical ID with them to the site to check in. Photos of an ID are not permissible. Players must be on the printed roster and have taken the quiz to be eligible to check in for games. Teams can have up to 2 players per game added to the roster on site if the player is listed on the roster on IM Leagues at that time. During the first game of the season, teams can add up to 5 players to the roster. On-site lookups take quite a bit of time, so we ask that you minimize this to keep games from starting late. Teams must have their minimum number of players required to play checked in prior to the scheduled game time, or the grace period will begin. Teams may have one coach on the team bench that is not listed on the roster. However, the coach does not have any abilities during the game. Timeouts called by coaches will not be recognized. Free agents are participants interested in playing intramural sports that do not currently have a team to play on. Registration as a free agent is done on the IM Leagues website. Participants create a profile and list the times they are available to play. As a captain, you can communicate with free agents to find players to add to your team. Free agents will be listed separately per league, so different free agents will be listed under single-gender teams and co-rec teams. A participant may only be listed under one league but is willing to play in another, so we recommend that you check the free agents from both leagues when looking for additions. Sportsmanship is an integral part of the mission of the intramural sports program. Here you will see the sportsmanship rating scale. A team receiving one sportsmanship infraction in a game can receive a sportsmanship rating between a 2.33 and a 3. Administrative technical fouls in basketball are not considered sportsmanship infractions. Your team's behavior before, during, and after a game is included in the sportsmanship rating for that game. A single person can have a huge effect on your team's sportsmanship rating. Sportsmanship is vital to the success of every intramural sports contest. Ejected players are immediately suspended from participation in all intramural sports activities. The minimum suspension for any ejection is 1 game. Verbally threatening, striking, or physically abusing any intramural sports staff member will be immediately suspended from all participation for at least 1 year. These cases may also be referred to the Department of Student Conduct and Academic Integrity for review. Ejections count as 2 sportsmanship infractions in your team's sportsmanship rating. The time length of a suspension does not begin until after the ejected participant has met with the intramural sports admin staff.
For teams to move into playoffs, again, that's changed a little bit. We used to have only the top 2 teams and divisions move forward. Now all the teams that are in a sport will be able to move into the playoffs so long as they meet a few requirements. You do have to keep that 3.33 sportsmanship average. So in that scale you saw earlier, that's an A- at the least. The online draw meeting will take place through the IM League's website. We'll have the bracket posted with all the times, and your team will be able to go in and select your place on the bracket. The order of the draw is determined by your record, and then your sportsmanship average, and then point differential, and then we even go to head-to-head if we need to, depending on the teams. But this online draw meeting is a situation where we use to give you the opportunity to select the best times for your team to play across the entire bracket. Understand that in playoffs, you're probably not going to be playing at the same time that you played all season. Also bring 2 different colored jerseys. We suggest you do that for all games, but particularly once you get to playoff games, because we start to go across divisions, and so teams could have selected the same color across 2 different divisions. For playoff eligibility, we have a minimum of 1 game played in the regular season, our first playoff game, as we hinted earlier. That means that you have to be signed in on that game sheet, and it can also be seen on the IM League's website under the games played column for your roster. All players present will be considered participants even for forfeited games. So if they checked in and signed in, they're still going to count. So even when you have a forfeit, make sure that your entire team and everybody that's there signs in, whether you're winning or going to lose for that forfeit. Make sure everybody signs in. Again, you want to have as many people signed in. You want to be at that roster cap, because when you get to playoffs, you might be playing at a different day, a different time. And so that extra person might be crucial for that playoff game where it's not the same day and time as you played all season. For sportsmanship averages that are below 3.33, we may include them in playoffs, but we'll enter directly on a probationary period. For playoff games, if a team receives below a 3.33, they will be entered into a probationary period. And what that means is that if there's a team that's on probation and receives another score below 3.33 for any game during playoffs after that probationary period starts, that team will forfeit that game. A team receiving below a 1 in a playoff game is subject to further disciplinary action beyond just being removed from playoffs. The alcohol and tobacco policy for Kennesaw State is listed on this slide, but it's pretty straightforward. We are 100% tobacco-free campus, so no cigarettes, no smokeless tobacco, no e-cigs. Don't drink before you come to games. Don't drink at games. It's all pretty straightforward. We have a very low tolerance, 0 tolerance truly to alcohol and tobacco as it relates to the intramural sports program.
For our indoor volleyball rules, all of our games will be held on the Kennesaw campus and will be played at the Siegel SRAC. The maximum players on the court at one time are 6 players. You have to have at least 4 to start. The roster cap for indoor volleyball is 12 players on your roster. For our co-rec teams, you have to have at least 2 of each gender present to start the game. All of our volleyball games are played best 2 of 3 sets. So our first 2 sets are played to 25 points. Our third set, if that is needed, is played to 15 points. For indoor volleyball, we use rally scoring, so there's a point scored for every serve that is given. You don't have to have the serve to get a point like typical volleyball rules, so we do utilize rally scoring. Each team is granted 1 timeout per set. So in the first set, you get 1 timeout. In the second set, you get 1 timeout. They don't roll over. The serve zone is between the sidelines and behind the end line. Serves cannot be blocked or attacked at the net by the opposing team, and serves that contact the net are legal, but they do still have to go across the net. The boundary lines in indoor volleyball are also considered inbounds. In volleyball, the team will get 3 contacts to return the ball to the opponent. If the team does get a block on a play, that does not count as a contact that is used to return the ball. The same player on the team also cannot consecutively contact the ball before a return. At no point should a player cross nor touch the net, so that includes crossing under or over the net. You cannot cross the net at any time. And for co-rec, teams that use more than 1 contact before returning the ball must have at least 1 male and 1 female contact. For our outdoor soccer rules, all of our games will be played on the Kennesaw campus as well and will be held at the Perch and the Owl's Nest. Teams are a maximum of 7 players in the field and a minimum of 5 to start. The roster cap for outdoor soccer is 14 players. Our co-rec minimum is 2 of each gender, plus the keeper who can be of either gender. Player equipment, you must wear closed-toed athletic shoes. Those can be cleats. If you do decide to wear cleats, rubber and plastic cleats are allowed, but not metal cleats. No player should be wearing jewelry. No player should be wearing hats with a hard bill or bandanas with knots. And the same color shirt is required. It cannot be yellow or gold, since that is what our officials will be wearing. Our outdoor soccer games consist of 2 20-minute halves with a 5-minute halftime. Goals scored by women in co-rec games are worth 2 goals. For our single gender sports, the mercy rule at 10 minutes is a 7-goal lead and a 5-goal lead with 2 minutes left in the game. For co-rec, it's a 10-goal lead with 10 minutes left in the game and a 7-goal lead with 2 minutes left in the game. If we hit that mercy rule limit, the game ends immediately. For outdoor soccer, we also use cards for any kind of offense that is cautionable or flagrant. We also utilize blue cards. Blue cards are only for slide tackling, so a team is granted 1 blue card per game, and if a player gets a blue card, they are disqualified. They are not allowed to play the rest of that game. They are not ejected. They're just not allowed to play. The team also does not have to play a person down. That blue card does serve as that team's warning for that game, however, and if there is another slide tackle after a blue card, that will result in a red card. A player that receives a yellow card, that is a cautionable offense. You can receive 1 yellow card in a game and still play. On the second yellow card, you are disqualified, similar to the blue card. The team does not have to play a person down, but you are ejected at that point. For red cards, that is a flagrant offense, and once that occurs, the team plays 1 person down, and the player is also ejected from the game. For our outdoor soccer rules with substitutions, we do allow unlimited substitutions in terms of how many subs you get per game. You do need to be beckoned on by the official. The AR on your sideline should be able to help you out with that. Anybody can sub on a goal scored or when there's about to be a goal kick. Either of those situations, any player can sub onto the field on either team. However, on throw-ins, free kicks, and corner kicks, when those are about to happen, the defense is only allowed to sub if the offense subs. The offense can freely sub at those times. For our softball rules, our games played on the Kennesaw campus will be held at the Perch, and the games on the Marietta campus will be held at the Marietta IM Rec Fields on Field 1. Teams are a maximum of 10 players in the field and a minimum of 7. The roster cap for softball is 18 players on the roster. For co-rec, you need a minimum of 3 of either of the genders. The other gender will obviously be 4 or more. For our player equipment, again, closed-toed athletic shoes are required. It can be rubber or plastic cleats, but no metal cleats still. No jewelry should be worn, but you can wear a hat, and you should be providing your own glove. All of our softball games are 50 minutes in length until we hit the no new inning mark. Once we get to that 50-minute mark, then the inning that has been started will be completed. If we do finish 7 innings in that 50-minute time frame, then the game will be over after we finish that 7th inning. And for reference, half innings end when a team gets 3 outs. The batting order needs to be set before the game, so you'll talk with our scorekeeper or our supervisor on site to make sure that that's clearly laid out. For co-rec, you have to alternate gender through your lineup all the way down the batting order. For both single gender and co-rec, you can have up to 12 batters in your batting lineup, but only a maximum of 10 in the field. We will provide bats, helmets, and softballs for use, and those are the only ones that can be used for the game. And again, we have gloves that can be checked out, but we don't have very many of them, so we're not going to be able to accommodate 2 teams. You're going to want to bring your own gloves if possible. For the first 3 innings in all of our leagues, the run maximum for the first 3 innings is 7 total runs. You will not be able to score more than 7 runs, and once a team gets to that 7-run mark, that inning is over. Thank you for your time and attention for the captain's meeting for our spring Phase 2 sports. All of our contact information is listed on this screen, so if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us. Thank you.